Okay, so we're just gonna ignore the fact that I have like 20 million tabs sitting up here because I don't know where else to put them where I won't forget they're there. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we're gonna be doing a if you like this, try this recommendation video. Before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what's a recommendation you have in this sort of a setup. I definitely want more of them. Okay, so I'm definitely not the first person to come up with this, but basically I'm gonna give you one book that's fairly popular and recommend another book that hopefully is a little less popular, but in the case that you've read this one, maybe you want to try this popular book. This is my first time doing one of these, and honestly I'm very nervous about it. I'm really worried that I either overthought or underthought these connections, so hopefully you'll like these. Okay, so starting out with one that honestly it's more surprising if you haven't read this book. Red, White, and Royal Blue by 𝗖cie mich𝘁. You would probably like Something Wild and Wonderful by Anita Kelly. Both of these are male-male romances in which we are following our main characters trying to find themselves. I think both of them could definitely fall under the new adult category. I will say Something Wild and Wonderful is more mature and a bit steamier, but both of these have fantastic character creation. That's something I really love about them. They also each have plotline. Sam! I'm sorry, Sam's attacking my laundry basket. It's very distracting. They also each have side plots which are just as important to the main story as the romance plots. If for some reason you don't know what Red, White, and Royal Blue is, basically this is a enemies to friends to lovers romance between the first son of the president and the second son of the Queen of England? No. Second grandson of the Queen of England. While Something Wild and Wonderful is a romance between these two men who are hiking the Pacific Crest Trail together, each trying to figure out themselves before they make a big change in their life. I have a lot of romance ones, so I'm going to try and split those up a little bit. Next, if you liked Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, I definitely think you should try out The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. Both of these are thriller stories in which they have a book within a book scenario. Home Before Dark is following a woman who has recently inherited this house from her father. She and her parents actually lived in this house for a short time when she was a child, but ended up leaving because the house was insanely haunted, or at least that's the story her father has been selling for years since then. There are alternating chapters between the book her father actually wrote about their experience in this house, as well as through the eyes of this woman as she's trying to fix this house up to sell. On the opposite side with The Nothing Man, we are following Jim, who is a normal security guard at a grocery store, and one day he sees that this new book came out called The Nothing Man. It is a nonfiction survival memoir from this woman who had an encounter with a serial killer known as the Nothing Man. However, turns out Jim himself is the Nothing Man. You alternate perspectives from Jim's view and the book itself, in which we try to figure out who is going to win in the end, Jim or the survivor. I highly recommend both of these. They're some of my favorite thrillers out there, and I really enjoy this setup, so I'm very excited for more of them. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. Next is one I have recommended a few times now, but I think it's been a while since I last talked about it. If you like Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, I highly recommend Tripping Over You by Owen White and Suzanne Harcum. Heartstopper is insanely popular, and honestly I feel like I don't have to give you a summary, but basically we're following two boys as they find out who they are together as a couple. It is a very adorable YA graphic novel series which is still ongoing and recently had a Netflix adaptation, which is absolutely phenomenal and I highly recommend. Whereas Tripping Over You sort of has the same setup. We follow these two boys as they fall in love and slowly start to grow together. However, this one runs for quite a long time, and we meet these two when they're actually in college, all the way up until they are adults living together and getting their own jobs. Both stories also have some more serious elements. Heartstopper starts to tackle eating disorders and mental illness as the story progresses, whereas our main character Liam in Tripping Over You suffers from depression and anxiety. Both of these are free to read online, but you can also buy physical formats of them. I also highly recommend both of them. They're equally adorable, and I've really never heard anybody else talking about Tripping Over You, but I've been reading it for years. It just recently wrapped up, and I'm still not okay with it. Rounding our way back to romance, if you enjoy the Brown Sisters trilogy, I highly recommend Bet On It by Jodie Slaughter. Well, yes, it is absolutely fantastic that both of these stories are featuring fat Black women who are falling in love. They also both have fantastic representation of mental health in each of their main characters. In Get a Life, Chloe Brown, Chloe ends up having a near-death experience, and after that she makes a list of all these things she wants to do to get a life. She ends up enlisting the annoying handyman who works at her apartment building, and the two of them start to work on this list, and feelings grow. On the opposite side with Bet On It, we are following 𝗖cie, who unfortunately is a bit of an anxious wreck, and really the only time she gets out of her house is whenever she goes to bingo nights every Wednesday. But things get a little bit more complicated when her favorite bingo buddy's grandson is in town, Walker. The two end up kind of making a bingo sex pact, and things evolve from there. I think an argument could definitely be made that every single main character in both of these two books has anxiety, but Chloe also has fibromyalgia, Red is healing from a previous abusive relationship, while in Bet On It, 𝗖cie has general anxiety disorder, and Walker is suffering from PTSD. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, both of these books are so freaking spicy, like, my god. Good stuff, good stuff. Oh, and I would be totally remiss to mention the fact that I absolutely adore Chloe's grandmother, but I mean, I loved the grandmother throughout the entire series in this book. However, in Bet On It, we have Walker's grandmother, who is equally as adorable and so much fun, and these ladies just make me so happy, so that's another connection right there. Next up is one that I'm so glad I'm not alone in seeing this connection. If you like A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, you should definitely check out A Light Amongst Shadows by Kelly York and Rowan Altwood. Both of these books are historical adventure stories with queer romances. I will say Gentleman's Guide is definitely more YA, whereas A Light Amongst Shadows does tend to lean more into new adult because it does have some darker topics. Not to mention this one also is paranormal, very heavy mystery as well. The first book also has some dark academia vibes. I know that's a big sell for a lot of people. In A Gentleman's Guide, we are following Monty, who is a certified bisexual hot mess who is going on one last vacation with his best friend and his sister before he is forced into a boarding school. However, Monty makes things a little bit more complicated, and the trio end up on the run from this obnoxious Lord Duke, something like that. In A Light Amongst Shadows, we are following James, who has just recently started going to this boarding school. He ends up rooming with William, and the two slowly start to form a relationship. However, there are some mysterious and eerie things happening on their boarding school's property, and the pair unfortunately get dragged into solving this when they are continuously visited by ghosts. These two were so obvious. I mean, honestly, having read both of them, it was just like, bam, connection right there. I just thought of another connection as well. In Gentleman's Guide, the love interest Percy is suffering from seizures, whereas in A Light Amongst Shadows, the love interest William is suffering from addiction issues. So that's another connection right there. Next up is another one that it wasn't really a far stretch. If you enjoy Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu, I highly recommend Fence by 𝗖cie his𝘁_𝗰𝘁. Both of these are sports-based graphic novel series, which also have some queer themes going on. This one does read a little bit younger. I believe the boys are all in high school, whereas Check Please is following Biddy throughout college. In Check Please, we are following Eric Biddy Biddle, who is a hockey player that unfortunately cannot take a hit because he actually was trained as a figure skater. We follow him as he improves on the hockey team, but also works his way through college and eventually falls in love with the captain of his team. On this side with Fence, we are following Nicholas, who is the illegitimate son of a big name fencing champion, and he is determined to get into this big fencing school so that he can prove himself just as capable as his father's legitimate son. However, the thing standing in his way is unfortunately his roommate Kenji, who kicked his ass the previous year in competition. We are slowly starting to see these two warm up to one another, but we also see some interesting relationships in the other boys on the team. Like I said, it does read a little bit younger, but it's just as much fun and equally as adorable. There are currently 5 volumes of the graphic novel out, as well as 2 books which are set in the same universe following different boys from the school. While Check Please is completed and there are 2 volumes, I think you can still read this online for free, but I also highly recommend buying them physically or getting them at your library because there's some fun additional bits at the back. Okay, so I know one person who will probably disagree with this comparison, but I think if you enjoy Beach Read by Emily Henry, you should definitely check out What If You and Me by Ronnie Lauren. Personally, I really like the way Emily Henry and Ronnie Lauren ride the line between being literary romances. As much as I enjoy a happy-go-lucky romance, I will admit I am a slut for some depressing shit also. So if you give me some emotional depth on top of the adorable romance and spice, yeah, I'm all over that. In Beach Read, we are following January, who has just recently found out that her father actually had a mistress for a long amount of time and a lake house that she and her mother did not know about. She ends up moving into the lake house, trying to clear it out, while also working on her novel, which she hasn't touched and is due by the end of the summer. Well, it turns out her next door neighbor at the lake house is Augustus Waters, her literary rival from college, who is also incredibly handsome. While on the opposite side, we are following Andy, who lives next door to Hill. Andy is a horror novelist struggling with anxiety and PTSD, while Hill is a ex-firefighter also struggling from PTSD and anxiety, also probably a little bit of depression in there for both of them, and has just recently become disabled. Forced proximity, already right out of the gate, is a very obvious one in both of these books, but each of them also just delve into some deeper topics. With January, we do get to see her struggling feelings in regards to her father after she has found out about this affair, because previous to that, she believed her parents had the perfect relationship, and that was really what she based all of her books on, and this has completely turned her world upside down. While Andy unfortunately has had some traumatic issues in a relationship previously and has sort of never really done anything since then because of her PTSD. I think both of these books also just showcase fantastic healing in the characters and the way you can be there for someone but shouldn't rely upon them to heal. You have to do that on your own, and I really appreciate the way that is done in both of these books. They're also both strangely hilarious and adorable, also a little spicy because, you know, they're romance books. I gotta talk about that. And I think the fact that they're both tabbed to hell showcases that I really enjoy and definitely recommend both of them. Okay, final one. And honestly, there's like a specific element that I'm recommending with this book. If you like 𝗖cie of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, particularly Nina and Matthias's storyline, you should check out The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. Once again, I don't think I really need to tell you what 𝗖cie of Crows is about because it is freaking everywhere lately. But basically, this is set in a fantastical world in which we are following an interesting combination of individuals working together to pull off a kidnapping for a large amount of money. Yeah, I'm calling it a kidnapping because everybody sells this book as a heist book. It's not a heist, it's a kidnapping. So, like I said, the big element that connects these two books was Nina and Matthias's point of view. Nina is a Grisha, which is somebody who has these magical abilities, whereas Matthias is raised in this society where they believe Grishas are witches and they kill them or utilize them as weapons. However, the two of them are forced to rely upon one another when they are involved in a shipwreck. We do mostly see this through flashbacks, and we see the after effects of their relationship once they have rejoined society and the way they slowly have to regain their trust of one another. In The Wolf and the Woodsman, we are following 𝗖cie, who is the only woman in her pagan village to not have powers. However, every year, multiple woodsmen from the Holy Order come on behalf of the king to take one of these wolf girls and offer her as a sacrifice. Unfortunately, the village ends up sacrificing 𝗖cie, and after some interesting events, she and Gaspar are the only two remaining on the trek to this kingdom. They slowly start to get to know one another and realize perhaps their goals aren't as different as they believe. They end up having to rely on one another to work their way through this magical forest. Ugh, like, not only do I love a enemies to lovers forbidden forced proximity romance, but also like the religious discussions in this book, so freaking good. That definitely is taken up a notch in this book in comparison to Nina and Matthias. That relationship right there, highly, highly recommend. All right, y'all, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!